Hey guys, this is Faster U4 brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa and Capital Cycles. If you're a cyclist, you want to go faster? Then let's giddy up. Hey guys, welcome to Faster U4 brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa and Capital Cycles. So, I did do some bike racing on the weekend, on this long Easter weekend. Something interesting happened to me at the North City Shopping Centre Charity Mental Health Foundation Criterium. I'll tell you what it was. I'll tell you about my philosophical thoughts for this part of the season. I'm feeling it. I'll tell you what I'm talking about, and I'll tell you what's coming up. It's quite a big race on the weekend, but I'm not really feeling it. There's a picture on the screen if you're looking at it, which I quite like. Thank you very much for taking photos and sharing, Trina Iono. And I kind of like this picture because this is a picture of of me sprinting through some corner in the car park at the mall, which is where the Criterium was held. John Randall, a good old friend of mine, took the use of the car park on Good Friday when the mall was closed to run this event, all the proceeds of which went to the New Zealand Mental Health Foundation, which was a great thing to do. Raised more than $10,000, and it was a good day all around. It was good fun. My kids and my wife came along and cheered, and lots of people did that, and it was a very good, fun, low-key vibe at the whole thing. Anyway, back to the picture. The reason I like it is because it sort of sums up for me a little bit how it was, which was sprint. Very short sprint corner, short sprint corner, short sprint corner. That's not really my riding style in the last wee while. So actually, why don't I show you some stats? You can see that the GPS track for this ride's all messed up because it was indoors. So of course the GPS can't get a lock on the satellite. So it says it's 1 kilometre. Obviously, it was a lot more than that, and the GPS track is all messed up. So there's not really any accurate data on distance or anything or speed. But does moving time, 37 minutes. So we did 35 minutes plus 2 laps. So that must have been a lap was just over a minute long. So you can see it was really, really short. In that time, 595 kilojoules. So we're going to say about 2 McDonald's hamburgers. No, maybe even... yeah, something like 2, maybe 3 McDonald's hamburgers consumed worth of energy. Average power, actually not that high, 266, and even the normalized power, 292, not even that high, but that's because, half of the time you're not pedaling, because you're cornering, half the time you're smashing it. And if you see the little trace down here of the power and the heart rate and the cadence and things, that is an extreme example of stochastic riding. So what stochastic means is how variable the power delivery is. You can imagine if you're riding a TT, generally the idea is to have very smooth power delivery. And in a crit, you don't have that luxury. So basically it just looks like a bunch of little needle spikes, because that's what the power delivery was like. Oh, I'll just turn on my fan here. And now, this is also probably an example where I like to think of, your form as a function of many things. And one way that's quite good to determine form, I think, from a psychological perspective, is the RPE, the reported perceived exertion of an effort or a ride as a whole versus your power. That's why it's good to have a power meter. my perceived exertion of this was very high, but my power was not, even despite the nature of the course. So I don't know if you can hear from the fact that I'm coughing and spluttering and generally not really feeling it. My form is at an end, people. This has coincided with Easter weekend, where I've heartily inhaled wide swaths of the chocolate landscape, and probably in the space of 3 or 4 days put on a kilo or so. And that is, I think that's healthy. So I'll talk a bit more about my thoughts about that in a sec, but basically Criterium was a good race. The A grade was really, really fast. In fact, if you're looking at the screen here, Trina did send me a couple of very short videos. There's a group of us, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 guys in A grade, something like that, maybe 12 or 13, coming down this ramp very, very fast. I clipped a pedal on the side at one stage, which got the crowd excited. But luckily, actually it's weird what you can hear. You know, when you're in a race, even though it's kind of loud and everyone's braking and there's the wind and all that, you know, if you clip a pedal on the side of the car park building, someone says, "Oh shit, Steve clipped his pedal. That was a bit dodgy." It's weird what you can hear. Oh, the other thing, you know, I sort of thought about in this race is I did this slightly dodgy overtaking move up the inside of a tight corner at one point, and I sort of regretted doing it because I thought I don't think it was dangerous, nothing particularly dangerous about it, but it was kind of a douchey move, and I shouldn't have been so aggressive early in the race. So there was that. Oh, one other thing that happened was there was a kind of it was quite weird. I think a couple of people this happened to, where you're ducking and diving through a lot of tape and cones and stuff in the lower section of the parking building, and at speed it gets quite disorienting. So at one point I ended up taking this weird shortcut through under some tape because I couldn't quite tell how far away it was. You know, I couldn't tell whether it was 10 or 20 meters away, and in a situation like this it's quite important. Anyway, I ended up taking a sort of like a 5-meter shortcut around the corner and instantly realised my mistake and raised my hand to the guys up behind me to say, "Hey, sorry." And because in the first move they did was to say, "Hey," and the second thing they said, "Oh no, it's fine." And I instantly owned up to my mistake. It didn't make any difference in the end, but it was just an interesting thing. I wondered if that was going to happen before the race, where you get a bit disoriented. It certainly did. It wasn't too bad though. So sprinting to a corner. There's a little video, if you're watching this, sort of the speeds and the acceleration through the building there. Here is that's just me somewhere else. So there's another one. It's a slow-mo of, well, that's me coming through. I think that's the slipperiest corner. My rear wheel did step out quite excitingly at some point. Dylan Reed behind me got a little bit of a fright when my rear wheel decided to go right by about a metre. Nothing else did. That was exciting. It wasn't that corner. Here's another video just swooping fast through one of the corners. You know, it actually worked quite well. The grip was fine. The day was dry, so there was no problem with anything like grip. Really, those slippery spots were probably where there was like a little bit of oil kind of almost embedded itself in the concrete. And a couple of the white lines were a little bit greasy, but nothing serious. There was 1 or 2 crashes, but I don't think anything serious, and nothing like it would have been if it was wet. So it was all fine and a good idea. So I don't know, I kind of feel like I'm rambling a bit, and that's because my mind isn't completely straight. So look, I'll just say, one thing I learned, I think, from the weekend, I ended up about 5th or something. I think Mike Naylor went away in the middle of the race and attacked and rode off the front and did a great job to win A grade, I think. What did I learn? I noticed that a lot of the guys who did well in this event were smaller guys, small wiry guys. So it's an interesting thing that, you know, everyone's aware of power to weight as it relates to climbing. and what the implication of all that is. But you know, just in an event like this, which is just hard acceleration after hard acceleration, you do see the effects of power to weight in that as well. You know, of course, you don't have to have as much power to accelerate that mass, which is essentially what you're doing climbing as well. You're accelerating a mass against gravity. It's really the same function of the same thing when you're sprinting. And this funny thing where, like, this big unit like me would sort of get it wound up, and I could sort of pass a couple of guys near the end of a long straight, but I didn't. You know, sprinting out of a corner was hard, and that's because I have 80 kilos of meat to accelerate, whereas these other guys have got, you know, 50, 55 kilos. You don't need as much outright power when you don't have as much sack of human to accelerate. So that was sort of the story of it. You can see they're a very high heart rate the whole time, 167 average. And maybe that's a very unusual event. Most crits even aren't as tight as that. So I don't know that it's necessary to say I shouldn't be riding crits, or that it's naturally a terrible event for me. It's just that that particular one was tough. And combined with that is a segue into the next thing I'll talk about, which is just this time of the year. Now, funnily enough, for some people, there's some quite big events like GrapeRide and Age Group Nationals coming up, which for a lot of people understandably are big events. But guys, I'm really feeling quite tired. And I have done this thing known as cycling for, you know, in some structured way for, you know, 20 years or 25 years. And there is a feeling you get, which is not so much that you don't even really like the racing anymore at this time of the season, but you don't have the, you just lack a bit of motivation and excitement. And it's tied up with your form, so naturally when you've got good form, you do feel more motivated because you do better, and vice versa. So I'm not really feeling it. I'm sure, you know, isn't that weird? I'm sure if I listen back to this, it will come across in my voice. I can sort of feel it. The way I'm talking is probably a bit slower and a bit messed up. And all I want to say about that really is that that's fine. That's it's good to not feel like that all the time. It's good to know when you feel like that and know when you maybe need to push the reset button. And this leads into what you can think of as a long recovery microcycle known as your transition phase. So when you're doing any build cycle for any type of endurance sport, classic principles of that are overload and recovery. And for most people, once every 3 weeks or so, a good rule of thumb is about 3 consecutive recovery days once every 3 weeks. So that means that you can fully recover mentally and physically from the training load that's been on you for that last 3 weeks. Almost like sometimes you go into those 3 days feeling wiped out, you want to come out of those 3 days feeling like you want to do it again. And the transition phase, which comes at the end of a season of racing, is kind of like just a long version of that. Most people say about 2 weeks is good. And I don't really like to give it a number particularly. I just think 1 to 3 weeks is usually pretty good. And in that phase, it doesn't mean you don't ride, it just means you ride as much or as little as you want. It's good to keep active a little bit. But you also want to pretty much eat the things you like, or kind of off the menu for other parts of the season. You want to maybe do some activities. Like this weekend I got stuck into the gardening because my garden was an overgrown mess, and I haven't really had the time to do that while I've been training and racing a lot every weekend. So that's good for you, it's good for your family, it's good mentally, it's good physically. It's important to remember it's normal and in a lot of ways healthy to feel a bit run down at certain parts of the season. You know, I've been racing almost every weekend since about June last year. The best part of whatever that is, 9 or 10 months or something. That's quite a long time. I still enjoy it. So if you're having this transition phase or thinking about coming into it this time of the year, some things to think about are that stuff I just mentioned. The purpose of it, it's equally as important a part of training as any other part of a process of training, but also evaluate in this time when you get that mental headspace the types of events you like doing. Think about if that's more of the same or less or different, and the type of training. So during a build cycle, the types of things I talk to my riders about are not only the demands of their events and how to train for that, but the training part, how you break that up into ideally drills or intervals or workouts or structures that you enjoy and fit with your lifestyle, because not everyone gets to be kind of like me and train every morning and write programs for cyclists. Some people actually have to go out and work in an office and stuff, and it's not always easy. So you really want to, it's good because it's close. You've got this time where you can really think it through properly and think about what makes you tingle when you think about it in terms of racing and training. You're not going to get to a really good level unless what you're doing makes you tingle and you want to do it. And that probably applies even more to this part of the season, because it's autumn and soon it'll be winter, and soon you're going to have to spend time on your indoor trainer or at the gym, or lots of bits of things that usually people find sometimes mentally harder to do. But if you have a good goal in mind that makes you tingle, or you're doing the workouts in such ways that make you tingle as much as they can, that's going to get you through. So I'm going through that phase. That's why I sound like I do. My form is low because that's all part of what I planned. All part of the big plan, guys. I want it to be good throughout most of summer, and I knew form would start to go downhill now. Certainly has, and I can see that when I do my own blood lactate testing once a week. I couldn't even finish the last sector of it last week. That's how tired I am. So I'm doing this phase now. I'm thinking about, there is an event down south called the 5 Passes, which is a team event. I don't know, I haven't decided yet, but I'm thinking about putting together a FitLab team for that. Thinking about doing Round Taupo again, which I haven't done for years, because it's a big event. Guys like doing it, maybe riding with a group of FitLab riders. I'm thinking about something like cyclocross. There's a great cyclocross scene in Wellington, Kapiti, over winter. So all of these things you kind of have the chance to properly evaluate, and I want you to do exactly the same thing. I think it's really, really good. And the last thing I'll say about it is trust your, it's pretty cliched, but trust your feelings, because even if you feel a bit wiped out this time of year, trust it when you feel that spark will come back in. It's the time when you can train again, or you want to train again. It's good to train again. Just be patient. Wait for the sparkle. Lots of riders feel impatient about that, because it can feel funny, you can feel fat, you can feel all those things are normal to go through your mind when your form's a little low, or you're just a bit tired, or even the weather's bad. Be patient, wait for the tingle, it will happen. I really like to talk to my riders about that. Right, so the next, I'll leave that behind. I'm waiting for the tingle. I'm just going to stay a little bit active, but even do some trail running. Wait for the tingle. Next event is the GrapeRide, the Forest Wineries, I think it is, GrapeRide on Saturday, this Saturday. And there is a Magnum event, 200 Ks. There is a Normie event, which is 100 Ks, and there's a couple of shorter ones even, I think, but the 100 K is what I'll be doing. As I say, this will probably be one of the last events for me for a few weeks. And I will hopefully be able to ride in the service of one of the other Fit Lad coaches, who is kind of at an opposite place from me at the moment, who is in very good form. I'd like to see that happen, and I'd like to see us pull off a good result at the GrapeRide. This event, from what I can tell, I have never ridden it. It seems to be moderately hilly, and funnily enough, it would probably suit me as a bigger sort of all-rounder if my form wasn't in the toilet, because I don't think the climbs are steep. They're kind of long and grindy. Can be hot, you know, maybe April, just about April, but it can be hot at this event, so you want to make sure that you have enough water. 3 bottles, I would say. I'm going to take an extra bottle in my pocket for this. 1 bottle an hour, it's good rule of thumb. Put some Tailwind in there, and you may even want a solid food item halfway through. Probably positioning, especially if you're a smaller rider, it's going to be super important in an event like this, because you don't want to get caught out and have to chase back on, especially if the gradients don't suit you. Now, I also understand that, and having never seen it but heard a lot about it, the final kilometre is really weird. Whether or not they change it, I don't know, because there's been a lot of complaints, but I don't know that there's a very narrow section coming into some vineyards, and I would say you just want to be on the safe side coming in there, because there's a lot of sprinting, elbows, excitement, guys trying to make up places, general disastrousness all over the shop from the fact that it gets so narrow after such a high speed section near the end. So I would be just wary of that. It's not have any collarbone excitement. So that's kind of all I got, guys. Feeling tired. Still love riding my bike, and just getting through this little phase will take a couple of weeks. So I'm also, one more thing, investigating a little bit, so block periodization. People use these terminologies like block periodization or like lactate threshold a little bit interchangeably with different ideas from time to time. Suffice to say, it's my wife calling on the phone, that's why I stopped there, so it's alright, you guys come first. She can wait for 5 minutes. So when we talk about training blocks, it's just any chunk of training between recovery cycles. That's it. So it could be long, could be short. It's not really a widely accepted common terminology for this. But when you talk about block periodization, usually you're referring to a very intensely focused period of training, the same type of energy systems for, say, a week or something, having longer recoveries, longer subsequent training days, and it's the sort of thing that can suit someone who's training for stage races, because that's the sort of demand of the race. I'm doing a little bit more investigation into how and if it can be applied to the usual form of racing, which is your weekend warrior, and I'll report back on that, have a look into that this week. So sorry if it's a bit of a boring podcast, guys, but it's just how I'm feeling. Doing my best, but I know the tingle will come back shortly, and that's when I'm going to train. I'm feeling excited about it. I would suggest, if you're worried about riding in bad weather, start watching those spring classics on TV. Tour of Flanders was on the weekend. Races like that, and it will kind of make you feel more motivated to ride those sorts of terrains and those sorts of weathers. It certainly helps for me. Roubaix coming up, obviously, is a perfect example. So guys, thank you to John Randall and his family and everyone that helped for running such a good event on Friday. It was really enjoyable, raising $10,000, over $10,000 for the New Zealand Mental Health Foundation. What a good idea. The day went perfectly. Alright, so if you'd like a training plan from me, you can email me, steve@fitlab.co.nz, or go to fitlab.co.nz. As always, this is brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa, and Capital Cycles. Hopefully, I'll see you on the weekend.